Okay, so for anyone needing a review of how to set up their timeline for their character, first of all of your pieces should be inside one movie clip that has your character in it. So this movie clip that I could bring onto the scene if I needed to, right? It has my whole character self-contained. That's where all the animation is. It's not in the main timeline. You can see right here, scene 1, the dude, because that's what I called him. Second of all, your character should be named the name, capital letter for the name, lowercase for the word the. So it could be the veg with a capital V or the dog with a capital D, whatever it is that you're working on. But in terms of animation, first of all, you'll need more animation than I have. I don't have all my animation in this. But you can see how very regimented this is, right? You want each section to be its own thing and start and stop in the same place. So, how do we do that? Well, step 1 is you need to make, I should actually name this, shame on me. You need a layer that is just for labels. There should be no things on this layer. You can see all these little dots are empty. They're empty circles. That means there's nothing there. And this is where we label the timeline so that the code can work. And I'm actually just going to write out what those labels are because it's going to be impossible to read. Oh, I don't get any character options. That's a shame. One moment. Okay, so through the magic of a pause button on a recorder, I saved you guys a lot of time. This is what each of your flags should read as. Still, still end, run, run end, jump, jump end. Doesn't matter if they're running or walking. Whatever their locomotion is, you have to call it a run because that's what the code says. They don't necessarily have to be in this order. If, oh no, you put the hit before the wave and then the jump after the all, that's okay. They just have to have these names, and it has to be still, you know, and then the one after it has to be still end. And the way you label a frame is you click on that frame. So like you click on the first frame and you go over to properties and you see this thing here that says name, right? A frame itself has properties that you can edit, and that includes the name of the frame, right? So each section is going to be having something on the beginning and then something on the end, and you need them to be paired together. So just because the whole run section can come after everything else, run end has to be tied with run. Everything's lowercase except the E in end. Alright, so you want to make sure you get these labels right. That's only half the battle. Hello? There we go. Oh, I accidentally deleted an L. Alright, so the other thing is that you can see, you know, it's keyframe and then a whole lot of blank stuff and then another keyframe, and then there's a keyframe right after it, a whole lot of blank stuff, and then another keyframe. These sections in the middle, in between these end keyframes, that's where you're going to animate. The row that's under, you know, still end, run end, jump end, that actually we don't want to work with because that's our buffer. In order for looping animation to work, everything always has to return to the same spot so that it can blend in from a run to a jump to a whatever else they're doing. If you don't, then it gets jumpy and weird and buggy. So you can see here that he's the same at the beginning and end of everything. Even at the end of his run, these two are the same. At the end of the still, these two are the same. So I want to show you kind of how to do that pretty easily. If you're using classic tweening, the purple tweening, then that's actually pretty easy because what you can do, I'm going to just do something silly like move his head really far. So if I put a keyframe right there, I hit F6, put a keyframe, and I move his head up for no reason, and I say, you know, tween. Oh, it's not letting me create a... Oh, I already have motion tweens earlier, which means it won't let me do a classic tween. Hold the bus. I'm going to get rid of... remove tween. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. Let's say you wanted to stick with classic tweening the whole way. Once you choose motion tweening, you can't do anything else on that particular layer. But let's say I wanted to do a classic tween. So I say create classic tween, and it does, woo, it's silly. And it actually, it continued it on back down to here. So it automatically kind of did that for me. Did a little extra work. Sometimes this thing can be smarter than I want it to be. There we go. So I got this, and it goes up here. And I actually want it to come back down to where it was here, right? Like the last frame of this middle section, I want it to go back down. Well, you can always select a frame, copy a frame, bring it here, and paste that frame in. And it puts it back exactly where it was, and then that way you can say create classic tween, and it does this, and it comes back down. And so it ends exactly where it started. Right? So if you're using a classic tween, it's very direct. Just copy paste the frame afterwards. If you're using the motion tween, which is this blue one, which is the one that lets you kind of auto key everything. Let me undo, get rid of my weird purpleness. There we go. Okay. If you're using this motion tween, the problem you're going to run into is that it doesn't allow you to copy and paste frames. It's annoying and stupid and I hate it. What I mean is that I say create motion tween, right? Oh, let's undo a little bit further. Shift F6, there we go. So I'm going to create a motion tween on the same layer, the head layer. And remember, when you just move something, it auto keys, which is great, except for one problem. So it's moved up here, and it's moved here, and I want to copy this. So I'm thinking, okay, I can copy this one frame. And I say copy frame, and I say paste frame, and I get this nonsense where it's a completely different tween and these two things are not talking to each other and it's annoying. This is a problem with motion tweens. They're a little over-engineered, which means you can't do simple things like copy paste frames, at least if it's the beginning. This beginning frame is considered like some special thing and it won't let you copy paste it within the same tween. Now, that's not to say there's not a solution. There's a solution. There's a couple of them. One of them, if you have already done some animation and you're like, I need this to get back to the last point, what you can do is you can go to the first frame, you can say copy properties, and then you can come back here and say paste properties, and it puts it back where it was. So all is not lost. Well, what's the problem? Well, the problem is you can't do that to multiple layers. I have lots of layers. What do I do if I have to do that for all of them? If you were in the purple classic tweening, you can actually drag select, multiple things, say copy frames, and then paste all the frames at the end, and it works out fine. You can't do that with copy properties. There is no copy multiple properties. It's just one at a time. So it's tedious. It's fixable, but it's tedious. So how do we avoid this epic amount of tedium? Well, by planning ahead. This is his right foot. Okay. So I want to move his right foot something crazy, but I have to move his head back. It's driving me bonkers. Okay. I want to move his foot, but I need to end up in the same place. Before I put any animation in, I can go to the very end and I can right click on this frame at the very end and say insert keyframe all. And you'll see how it makes that little black dot right there. That's a key or a keyframe. And now when I wrong layer. When I move this, it's gonna, it starts here, goes there, and now it'll end up back where I wanted. So if you really like using the motion tween, which I do, it's my preferred method of animation, you can use it. It's just that before you get started on any layer, make sure you go to the end, right click, insert keyframe all. And then that way, here you go, insert keyframe, all, and it'll put keyframe right there. It does it even if you have the whole thing selected. It puts it where the time marker is, which is good. But that'll mean that you don't have to worry about copying properties later. And I believe that's something you can do to multiple layers. Let's test it. So create motion tween. I need motion tweens on all these. I can drag select all of them, say insert keyframe, all, ta-da. Now they will all end up back where they need to, despite the fact that I might do something completely nuts, like move this guy over here, and move this over here, and move him up here. There we go. So he's going to scatter, but everything will get back to where it was before, which means it'll move seamlessly into the other pieces without having to worry about. I'm actually very curious to see how this looks. It's so stupid, but see, he comes back together. So no matter what you're doing, as ridiculous as that is, it comes back together so it can look like he's walking, which is what we're aiming for. All right, so the biggest thing, first of all, labeling all of your labels correctly, although that can always be fixed later, and Flash will tell you straight up that your label doesn't exist, go fix it. But just keeping everything organized. I like having this buffer in between everything. If you're using motion tweening, which is the blue one, that's necessary. Otherwise, you end up with this continuous long giant tween that, something could go wrong and you can't end it. Remember, motion tweens have that awful crankiness where once you start them, if you have no frames after them, it makes you continue the same one. It doesn't allow you to put a frame there later. Classic tweens are a little bit more friendly. You can always add frames after them that are not part of the tween, but it's still a good idea to have this buffer because it means it always comes back to that, and it's a good way. If I really screwed up this jump, because this is pretty terrible, I can always delete this whole section, and it's not going to affect the run or the wave, right? Because it's its own separate thing. I could delete all those frames, put a new jump at the end, and everything would still work. All the other work I did would still be okay. I know this is regimented, but this is how we want our animation to be on something like a game. It's all in cycles, it's all in loops, it's all in little bits and pieces that are kind of plugged in together.